Welcome, welcome.
Hello, how are you?
Good, good. Um, haven't heard from Abel. Hopefully he's coming along and be ashamed to lose someone.
Mm.
Um, but while we do wait, what's new? What's good? What are you celebrating?
Oh, I don't know. This?
Yeah, all right. I like the you got a whole lilac get up.
Oh, yeah, it's my color.
What's lilac in dreams represent?
I don't know, I'd have to look it up
Okay.
because it depends. It depends on everyone. But I love looking at color psychology.
Okay. Something I don't know
Mm.
much about.
It's really interesting. It's really cool.
I think in the later waves of the gateway training, they get into color breathing because it does
Yeah, yeah, I saw that in the
psychological
video.
significance. So,
Yeah, that's cool. So I'm having technical difficulties tonight, so I'm on my phone. I'm just trying to restart my laptop. It's kind of like freezing and not really doing what it's meant to. So hopefully,
okay, will you do that, and we'll go around and just get some new good and celebration.
yeah, cool.
And then hopefully Abel has arrived and your technical issues are sorted.
Great.
All right, Angie.
Hey, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Yes, nice
Oh
vacuum
yeah,
cleaner.
awesome. Yes.
Is that your
Um,
decoration?
well, what is
The
it?
the
Oh
vacuum cleaner.
yes, it is. It's right there. I didn't realize. Great. Okay, let's move it. Yeah.
Nice, looks good.
Um, cool. What is good? I mean, getting clear with my objectives. I'm
Okay,
getting super precise with what I want to do.
okay.
And yeah, so I'm celebrating today because I'm pretty happy about that.
Feeling clear.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Excellent, excellent,
Yeah.
fantastic. Daniel,
Celebrating full
Done.
moon.
celebrating the full moon.
Full moon.
Yeah, yeah,
Hunters.
nice
It's a
one.
hunter's moon. It's a hunter's moon tonight.
Excellent.
And
What is a hunter's moon exactly?
I don't know, just some special brightness or something. I think hunter's moon, and it's in Aries. The moon's in Aries, and I'm in Aries, so it's a
Ooh.
supposed to be a pretty special day. Nothing
Nice.
really special has happened until now, so I guess I saved the best for last.
Yeah. I'm in Aries too, so yes,
Oh,
seems like there's
Whoa.
yeah,
there you go.
must be some stuff going on.
Yeah, there
Mm.
you go.
All right, awesome. Ricardo.
Hello, guys. Good to see your pretty faces again. I'm celebrating clarity that is coming into my life.
Good, excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, thanks to inner work and also a new routine that I'm working on. And also, I think thanks to this new knowledge that I'm studying here, that I'm pretty excited about. So everything is aligning. I was
Great.
able to make to write down a vision. It's still not as detailed as it could be, but it's a beginning.
Good, good. Did you change anything in particular about your routine, or is just happenstance things have started to just fall into place naturally?
Well, I made this kind of list which
Okay.
satisfies my slight autism,
Okay, got you.
and where I can like paint every time I do a task,
Nice.
and I have different things that I want to do during my week, like not in specific days, but I know how many times per week I want to do them. So whenever I feel like doing them, I do them, and then I'm super happy to
Yeah,
end.
it's funny, little tiny little systems like that, just checking things off. It seems to be very effective.
Yeah,
Something about it's the hunter's moon, right? It's like you feel like you got a kill or a win.
exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So Mel has just dropped out, but I assume she'll be back shortly. And Abel has messaged to say he's coming right now. So hopefully everyone will be back in shortly. So I'll give them a minute, give them some grace. But I also would like to kick off because this is a really important it's a really important meeting because we're going to get into the training proper this week. So um what I'd like to do is we'll recap from the learnings so far, right? And I'm going to give an overview. So if any info or any knowledge has kind of slipped through the cracks, I'll catch you up on what I think is the important information, right? And then we will go into some of the new information ahead of the actual training. Welcome, Abel. Good to see you, my friend. Do you want to just update us? Anything new for you? Anything that's going well? Anything you're celebrating at the moment?
Well, I think it's going pretty well in every aspect of my life. I would say I'm quite happy that everything, specifically the main thing. This is my last year before uni, and I've been going to the unis to see how it's going, and I'm quite enthusiastic about it.
Excellent. Fantastic. So there sounds like there's a lot of enthusiasm, excitement, good things are happening. People are gaining clarity. It's a really good thing because this is going to be an important week. We're going to start the HemiSync training. So we're going to recap the knowledge that we've done so far. I will recap it as well. So like I will recap it in a way that like highlights the important information because obviously there's a lot. It can be hard to know what to pay attention to. And then I'll give you some pointers on what to expect in the upcoming week. Ricardo, do you mind if I just make a request? And this goes for everybody for cameras on. It's mostly for my own benefit. I like to be able to see you guys and know that you're paying attention and etc. So I understand the desire to just like sit back and let it soak in.
No, sorry, I was handling my cat.
Got you. You can handle your cat on camera. That's all good.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah, I'm sorry if that's annoying, but it's certainly a preference for mine. I like to be able to speak to people rather than pictures or names. Okay. So before we do launch into the content, are there any just general questions? Anything that has come up that people are kind of burning to ask or just wanting to get off the chest? Anything like that? Okay, in which case, I'll go straight into it. I have some slides prepared, so bear with me while I just share my screen. Why can't I find this? Okay, can you see the gateway process week 2? Yep. Okay, excellent. All right, so this week, the agenda for today is we've done our celebrations. We're going to do a quick recap of the information, and then I'll give you time to just ask questions, clarify understanding, make sure that just we're clear on some of the theoretical stuff. I will kind of catch us up to the story so far. So there's kind of a narrative here of trying to understand where we are kind of in the universe, what we are as consciousness, what the physical makeup of reality is. And then the theory that we're working through sort of is predicated on this idea that we can enter through altered states of consciousness. And this training is about helping us energetically change our brain states, which gives us access to different kinds of information, different experiences, and hopefully things like clarity, coherence, etc. All right, so hopefully that will provide a nice theoretical context for us moving forward as we start to do practical stuff. And then I'm going to talk about the practice we'll do and the resources you'll have available, as well as some future homework. I do have a request from you guys. It's not mandatory, but because we're going through a bit of a training process, I'd love it if you, before you start HemiSync, if you just post into the School of Alchemy community, right? So that is here. Just make a post where you introduce yourself and just talk a little bit about your goals and vision. It does not have to be anything too crazy. Sorry, one sec. It doesn't have to be anything too crazy, but just something that sort of like timestamps this before we get right into the training, and making your goals and vision a little bit public will help that be cemented. There's an accountability element there. Okay. Ricardo, this might also help put into words as something that you're getting clarity on your vision. But just a brief introduction, and this serves obviously the purpose, as I just said, of the accountability, but there's also my own selfish reasons in that I ultimately want this to become a school, right? A proper school, and community engagement is going to be really important. So if you do post before you start the HemiSync training, and then when you see other people's posts, just like it or comment if you want. That helps me get some community engagement as well. So if you can do that once before we start the HemiSync, and then the second thing I would like us to do is if you wouldn't mind agreeing to an exit interview at the end of this, and we can just talk about your personal experiences. So we'll do it one-on-one. So you and I can have a nice conversation. What was your goal? How did you find the training? Anything else you want to say? And it can be sort of like a mini little podcast thing that just talks about your experiences. As I said, neither of these things are mandatory, but I think they'll be great for your experience. One, for the accountability, and two, for the just general social communal aspect. Okay. To give you, just go ahead. Yeah, and to give you a sense of what we'll be accomplishing or looking to do in the following week, we're going to continue reading the book. We'll try to get up to chapter 4. This might be a stretch, so if we don't get all the way there, that's fine. We're going to begin wave 1 of the HemiSync training. Sorry, just one second. I'm going to close the door. Okay. So we'll begin wave 1 of the HemiSync training. I would like to get through 3 waves in this 4 to 6 week program. Okay, and in each wave, there are 6 lessons. So over the next week, if you could do 3, and they're like 25 to 30-minute trainings, right? So it's just like a guided meditation, effectively. So 3 30-minute guided meditations would be our way of beginning wave 1 while we're reading chapters 2 to 4. So we're taking in theoretical information while we're training, and you can access the information either through an app that I have. So that's pretty handy. You can have it on your phone, and then you can just put in headphones, and that should work. Otherwise, I've already dropped the zip files into the WhatsApp chat. Okay, and if you want me to resend those or anything like that, then you can have them on your computer, and you can access them at any time. So I'm happy for you to have all of these files. They're yours. And then what we'll do is we'll continue using WhatsApp or School to communicate with each other and meet up for Q&As, etc. Okay, so we've done the celebrations, etc. So why don't we get into the story so far, which is, oh man, I had this so lined up, ready to go. All right. So we've talked about sound, waves, and vibration. And so the really basic idea, and I think Bentov has a kind of a nice style. He's obviously talking about technical things, but he's also tries to be a little bit humorous, and he draws these funny little cartoons. But I think they nicely tell the story. So the basic idea is any movement we make creates what's called rarefactions. It rarefies air, which means it compresses and decompresses the air around it. And this rarefaction process creates sound, even if it's really, really quiet. It's below our ability to hear it, or it's called infrasound, right? Any movement we make creates this sound, these rarefactions. We even hear, say, a mosquito or a fly buzzing because it's creating a high frequency, high pitched noise because it's rarefying the air around the wings as it beats them, right? And so we hear it as this like pure tone, like this high pitched note, right? And he even goes as far as to say, if you get this just like little wire here and you heat it up, say put an electrical current through it, there's movement of the electrons, which is in a magnetic field, sort of around the Earth has a magnetic field. Any wire and electricity moving through a wire is going to create a magnetic field. And then there's heat and expansion. And because there's expansion, there's those rarefactions take place, right? So all of these processes are creating that same rarefaction process of creating these sound waves. He then talks about just plucking a string. right? So you can get a string between two endpoints and you pluck it and it's going to vibrate back and forth, right? You could vibrate it at 1/4 of its length. So if you plucked it in the middle, that would be one full wavelength right across the string. If you plucked it at 1/4 of the length, it would have half the wavelength. So you'd get two standing waves. And in the middle of the two waves, you'd have this node, right? So this spot in the middle doesn't change. It doesn't move, but the strings on either side of this node are going to bounce up and down, right? If you had two waves, you can get either constructive or destructive interference. So you've got two waves that have the exact same wavelength and frequency. When they interact with each other, if each peak is at the same place as the other wave, then you'll get this constructive interference, which means the resulting wave is twice as large as any of the individual waves, right? So the two waves interfere with each other, producing a new wave which has the same frequency but a higher amplitude. The converse of that is you can have destructive interference. So you have the same two waves, but they're just out of phase and they will cancel each other out, which is kind of strange to think. Like, and you can see this like in the ocean. If you see two waves traveling towards each other, you actually get this canceling out. And it's actually, if you pay attention to it, it looks really quite bizarre. You have these, quite rough things, and then they come into contact with each other and they cancel out. And this happens with sound. If you put two sounds together, but there are, can destructively interfere, you get silence. Somewhat counterintuitive, but the constructive interference, I think, is really intuitive. So hopefully it's not too much of a stretch. And if you think about it for a moment, or you see it visualized, it should make pretty good sense. Applying this same principle, we could take two notes, two wavelengths of slightly different frequencies, right? Different wavelengths. And if, say, the top one is 50 hertz and the bottom one is 60 hertz, you'll get a mixture of constructive and destructive interference such that the resulting pattern is an entirely new wave with its own frequency. So 50 hertz on the top one, 60 hertz on the middle one produces a 10 hertz frequency. And so what you'll hear is this new sound frequency. So he goes a little bit further, that's just really basic waves like strings or vibrating patterns of any kind. But what he says is that you could actually do this in higher dimensions, right? So he talks about you could have a 3-dimensional standing wave in fluid where, let's say, you just had like sultanas in a cake, right? And you could just like compress the cake and everything's going to go through this compression and etc. And he then describes this process of like if you had, say, water in a pan. So let's say we're looking down on pan and it's filled with water and it's still, and then we dropped 3 pebbles into it simultaneously, you're going to get this ripple effect. The ripples from the pebbles are going to go outwards. And as the ripples from each pebble go towards each other, they're going to create these interference patterns. Now, imagine at a moment in time you snap froze that water. You'd create this ice sheet and it's got a frozen interference pattern. You could pluck the pebbles out, but you'd still be able to trace back based on all of the interference patterns, all of the diameters of the wave patterns, exactly where those pebbles are, right? And so if you took that ice sheet and you shone coherent light, and a coherent light, a laser is coherent light, right? It just means light of a single wavelength. If you shone it through the frozen surface, the interference patterns, what would happen is the light would diffract and it would create a visual image of the 3 pebbles, which is pretty cool. It means that the interference pattern stores the information about those pebbles. And all you would need is the interference pattern plus a laser to recreate in relatively high definition exactly where those pebbles are based on the interference patterns alone. Even cooler, if you then smashed that ice sheet and you took any one piece You could do the same thing. You could shine the laser through that piece, and it would again produce the exact locations of those 3 pebbles. Now, this is a really, really interesting concept, because what it says is that the information is stored everywhere across the pan. In other words, the part encodes the whole. You could take any part of that pan, any interference pattern, and recreate the whole image, right? And so that is the basic idea behind a hologram. And holo of hologram means holistic, gram, image. So a whole image from any part. This is observed in nature. We talked in the very first lesson, Dan, we talked about chromosomes. We talked about DNA, right? So the same basic principle applies here. Your chromosomes are stored in every single cell of your body. So if I scratched your nose, I grabbed a skin cell from your nose, in theory, I could entirely reconstruct your body, everything about you, from any one of those skin cells, because every single cell contains the full chromosomal makeup of who you are. In other words, every part of you encodes the whole of you. What's really interesting about a hologram is that when you just look at the interference pattern, it doesn't necessarily look like the thing that it represents. So your chromosomes don't necessarily look like you, but they contain all of the information about you genetically. Here, this just weird wave pattern, it doesn't look like anything, but if you shone coherent light through it, you would find that you could fully reconstruct a 3-dimensional object, and in this case, it's an apple, right? So this holographic plate, a holographic picture, does not look like the actual image the way a normal picture does. But what it does is when it interacts with light, it creates a holographic emulsion, which is a fully high-definition 3-dimensional image, okay? And so a simple hologram might look something like this. You would have a laser, and then half of that laser is refracted, say, using a prism, and reflected through a mirror, and ends up on a holographic plate. Right? So this pathway does not interfere with any object. Okay? It just goes straight from the laser, is reflected a couple of times, but no notable interactions take place, and it just ends up on let's say, a mirror or a photographic plate. Oh, sorry. This top laser is the one that's not being interfered with. The bottom laser will hit a mirror and then interact with an object, right? And then land on the photographic plate. So you have one laser beam split into 2. Half of it doesn't interact with an object. The other half does. And when they're combined, they will create that interference pattern. And that interference pattern is a photograph, a holographic plate, that would represent the apple. So this same principle of interference patterns is used in nature. So for example, a bat uses sonar to hunt. And so it's putting out sonar waves into the environment, and those waves are going to interact with the waves of a moving object, let's say. And based on the interference pattern, the bat can effectively see its food, right? As a result of it putting out these sound waves, the interference returning back to the bat, and as it moves around, it's going to notice the changes of the pattern, and that's going to allow it to see and hunt and eat. And all of that is basically built up of the same principle of interacting waves. Okay? Finally, the basic idea is that everything is oscillating. We are made up of energy. Oscillation just means, going between action and rest, or peak and trough, on or off. If we took a violin string and we vibrated that violin string, if there's another violin in the same room, tuned to the same frequencies, it will start to have a sympathetic resonance. Okay? So the guitar string or the violin string of one creates a resonant or sympathetic resonance with a second string. Okay, so these two are effectively communicating. They're in harmony with each other. So the basic idea then would be that all oscillating systems are going to have greater or lesser degrees of sympathetic resonance with all other oscillating systems. This provides us with the theoretical framework that would suggest that we can interfere with each other and we can harmonize with each other. And because we're constantly moving around and our brains are, giving off an electromagnetic impulse, our hearts are doing the same, right? Our bodies, all parts of us are vibrating. We can come into tune with each other, both in overt ways through, say, language, and less obvious ways like through emotions and our basic energetic makeup. So that forms effectively the theoretical basis for everything that we're going to explore. Okay. Now, not all of that is immediately obvious how it's going to relate to the hemisync training. But as you keep reading, you're going to start to see that we're going to build up a model both of, I guess, the universe, of consciousness. And then when we start to learn to tune into our own natural resonance, we're going to see how this applies and how we can understand our brain and our experience in our universe in holographic terms, right? And then how we can apply the principles of resonance to, let's say, tuning into our own body, which can create healing. So resonance creates healing. And our ability then to potentially go beyond normal states of consciousness, right? So one example would be if we are a resonant system and we're in tune within ourselves, and we are operating within a larger resonant system like the Earth, right? Then information about us can be carried through the Earth's atmosphere or through its it acts like a carrier wave of information about us, right? And so we are embedded in, different oscillating systems. And so we can use that as an information storage and information transmission platform effectively. Okay. Okay. So without going too far out of what we've learned in chapter 1, that is the basis. Are there any parts of what I've just said that people would like to explore further, to discuss, you have questions about, or don't make sense? I'm going to give it a minute in case there are any things that people wanted me to discuss further, or just like to comment. Was there anything that was particularly interesting or anything that you found surprising? Or was it actually really intuitive for most people?
Yeah, it made a lot of sense. I like the way he writes. It's quite good. It's easy to understand, and so yeah, it's easy to pick up. I had a cousin who's blind, and he used to do sonar. He learned to do sonar as a young guy, and so he'd just click. He'd go,
Yeah.
and he could tell. He could walk into a strange room, and he'd know where everything was. Yeah, so it's pretty neat. So the bat, when I saw that bat thing, it just reminded me of my cousin who could do that.
That's awesome. I really like that. I think there was a movie made of was it Ray Charles? Movie Ray, and he realized that he could kind of do that, and he would like make as he was walking down a corridor, he'd know where like open doors are and rooms because he would notice where the sound changes as he walks past things. So that idea as well of, if you're blind or you lose a sense, the other senses become heightened, and it's true. I studied this a little bit during my PhD. There's something called sensory substitution. So what we would do is like blindfold people, and then we would feed visual images through a camera onto a vibratory plate, which we were testing out one that worked on your tongue. So you could like encode vibrations on your tongue, which would tell you where something is in space. And so you could like wear these sort of glasses, images would come in, it would be converted to vibration. And so if it was like further to the right, you feel it on the right. If it's further away from you, you feel it like at the back or something like that. But there's other demonstrations have been done, where with like you wear a jacket and you can feel it all over your back. So your back becomes like a visual space. and you can learn to navigate. You can learn all kinds of things. But what's most interesting about that research is that you are seeing. So it's recruiting your visual cortex, right? It takes some time. You have to learn the associations, but effectively your visual cortex is becoming engaged. So you're having a visual experience, even if it's not coming directly through retinal projections, right? So our brain is like a use it or lose it kind of mechanism, but it doesn't mean your visual brain would just shut down. It means it would be recruited for other things, right? So what this kind of opens us up to is, can we then learn to have, say, other senses, right? So like we now have almost a sense of the stock market or of social media. We actually kind of feel these things through our nervous system, right? So we actually sort of have a sense of this. And that I think is what we're trying to develop here. We're trying to develop a sense, sort of an intuition for information that we don't necessarily pick up through our main senses, eyes, ears, taste, etc., right? Because we are embedded in all of these oscillating environments. And therefore, we have, at least to some degree, the capacity to feel it. It comes across as interference patterns, the same way all our senses do. So what we're going to try and do here effectively is try to, close out some of the noise, come into tune with some natural resonance signals, and then become more sensitive to our own nervous system and how it interferes with other oscillating systems. For an example, the Earth, the Moon, or other people. Yes, Abel.
So I have a question. So if you can tune yourself to any frequency eventually, what about the frequencies of the you were talking about the other time, the TV frequencies, things like that? If you tune into those ones, what will happen? Would you be able to understand what they are sending to you, or it's only about nature resonance?
So we have perceptual sensitivity within certain frequency bands. So just if I'm blasted with ultraviolet radiation or microwave or TV radiation, I'm still not going to be able to see it because I'm not sensitive to it, right? Which is why we have these conversion mechanisms like the antenna and then the TV. It has to actually re-encode that information so that we can make sense of it. However, some of the sensations that we're going to explore are some that we actually do have sensitivity to, right? So it's like that guitar or violin string that vibrates in harmonic resonance with another one, right? Because they are basically made of the same thing, they actually vibrate at the same frequency. See, we don't vibrate at the same frequency as radio cell towers, right? They vibrate very differently. But with humans, because we're made up of basically the same thing, we look basically the same, our vibration is very similar, we actually are tuned to that kind of vibration. So to answer your question, it's unlikely that you're going to be just able to naturally decode, say, radio frequency. And it's a very good question, because naturally, like, what are we expanding our sensitivity? Are we expanding our, the range at which we can come into contact with things? So the answer is no to that, but we're going to become more aware and more sensitive to things that are already present for us that we just typically ignore. And this is why I say I think everybody already is telepathic. It's just a matter of learning how to use it. Just as Dan's blind friend who used the clicks, it's not that he developed an entirely new sense. He just trained a sense that already existed to become better and more informative. That's what we're going to do. But great question. Any more?
One thing I found really interesting was that there was a diagram. I don't know whether it was in the chapter, but there was a diagram of the visual of all the light frequencies, and then the little snapshot of what we can see, and the same with sound, right? And of all the light and all the sound, we only see a tiny little bit, right? That freaked me out, because all of a sudden I'm thinking, there's all this shit going on right next to me, perhaps, that I have no idea about.
Absolutely.
And that it just blew my mind when and I kind of knew it, but when I saw that diagram and you see the magnitude of what you don't see or hear, I'm just going, man, there's a whole other universe going on.
Yeah,
right next to me right now.
And,
It
yeah.
just freaks me out.
Yeah. So I really like that because, yes, effectively, we can only tune into things that we are sensitive to, right? And there is a tremendous amount that we're not sensitive to. But even within the things, that narrow band, we're still only very aware of a small fraction of that. So a lot of what we pay attention to, by virtue of paying attention to something, we actually have to block out other things, right? You're probably familiar with the idea, like, you buy a new car and it's a, Toyota Camry and it's red, and then all of a sudden you see all the red Toyota Camrys everywhere, right? All of a sudden your attention has been tuned to something else, but you're not paying attention to all the blue Fords out there. So within our already limited band, we have an extremely narrow filter of things that we can pay attention to. Hopefully what we can do here is pick a channel that we do want to pay attention to, which is effectively our intuition. And then we want to use that and expand it so that we have just a greater sensitivity to things that we are all already technically sensitive to, but not paying attention to. Right. So this is really an attention thing. All right. Again, great questions. These are showing me that you guys are really picking up the content, which is fantastic because I'm very aware that there's a lot of technical information here. But I also think that it's relevant to all of us, and therefore anyone who wants to know about it has the ability to. So that's my hope, and I think you guys are absolutely proving that, which I'm really happy about. Any other general things? And then we'll move on to what this next week is going to look like. Okay. So what we're going to do this week, I do want to stress the value of the theoretical information. I think you'll get more out of it if you have if you're actively taking in theoretical information about vibration, holograms, etc. Because while it's not immediately obvious how some of this fits in, I think over time, once you get the full picture, once you've gone through and understood how to practice and all these things, I think having a greater appreciation for this model of reality will really help. So feel free to push back on that if it's just like, if you just really want to train and not read the book, or the book's a problem, or it doesn't make sense why holograms are even relevant here. If that's the case, cool, push back on me and we'll talk about it. But just for now, let's try to go with equal amounts of book chapters and hemisync training, okay? So I'd like for us to go from the book, chapters 2, 3, and 4, which are all the most technical ones. Okay, so we're going to stick with the technical stuff. And then the later chapters are a bit more fun because they talk about sort of like models of the universe and spiritual stuff. And it's kind of fun. It's fun, but it's less technical. And who knows, it could be just completely wrong and who cares, right? But it's fun to talk about. First few chapters, technical. It's about sound, frequency, vibration, holograms, etc. So let's get through that by the end of this week. And at the same time, we're going to do 3 lessons within the first wave of the training. What this is going to do is going to introduce you to the basic techniques. Okay, so I haven't talked too much about the training or the techniques itself, but what we're going to do is the hemisync itself. Hemisync is the patented technology, right? And it stands for hemispheric synchronization. And the way that hemispheric synchronization is achieved is through that process of interference patterns. One frequency played to one ear, one frequency played to the other ear, which means that your brain is going to create the beat frequency between them, right? So we talked about that image of 50 hertz and 60 hertz with the resultant wave being 10 hertz, right? Since this is not happening in the external world, it's all happening through the interference of your neural patterns. What's going to happen is you're going to hear one in one ear, hear the other in the other, and then your brain is going to start creating the impulse that is the frequency between them. And that means we can sort of dial in the frequencies that your brain is producing pretty accurately, let's say. And so you're aware that there are certain bands of frequencies that correspond to different mental states, right? In particular, we're going to focus on that theta range, which is, you know, around 7 hertz. There's a band. It depends who you ask, but it's like 5 to 8 hertz is that theta. That's associated with creativity, deep meditation, REM sleep, etc. Obviously, the brain has tons of different frequencies, but this one seems to be associated with those things. And what is curious is that that frequency is the same as the Earth's Schumann resonance. Right? And so it's an interesting coincidence, we'll call it coincidence at this stage, that the same frequency as the Earth's resonance and the same frequency of the same brain rhythm is associated with these like flashes of insight. People receiving these kinds of like downloads or things that are completely novel ways of viewing a problem, or you know, something that they just like feel came out of nowhere, right? Seem to be associated with the same frequency. So what we're going to do is, using this hemisync approach, using the beat frequency, we're going to slowly start bringing your brain into a certain level of coherence, right? And by the virtue of one hemisphere hearing one sound and the other hemisphere hearing the other, it's going to create increased communication between the hemispheres, right? And while it's not necessarily true to say that the left brain does this and the right brain does that, that's an oversimplification. But they do have tendencies towards different things. So left brain is sort of more analytical, right brain is more creative. But when they operate together and you have, you know, harmonization across the hemispheres, you get very clear thinking, right? You get like better quality of thoughts. You're better able to focus, right? Because you feel like you're in flow more is probably the best way to describe it. So this should create a slightly more of a flow state. Yes, Ricardo?
It's more of a technical question. These beat frequencies, you can produce them with your brain only with headphones, or you can also use monitor speakers, for example. How does that work?
You would have a similar experience if you did both. It would sound similar, but if you just used stereo headphones, what would be happening is the sound interference would be happening in the external environment, and then you'd be hearing that. Whereas what we want to achieve is for the brain to produce the beat frequency, right? And for that to happen, you need to have the two different sounds in different ears. So you need stereo headphones.
Okay.
Yep, go ahead, Dan.
Will wearing hearing aids affect that ability? Is it the mechanisms in hearing aids? I think they amplify, but I'm not sure whether they actually change certain frequencies or affect them.
I doubt it, but do you need to wear a hearing aid to listen through a stereo headphone?
Oh,
Like if you've got,
I'll try without, but yeah, that I think I'd struggle a bit. But that's why I was just curious. I'd prefer to wear them, but if it's going to affect the performance, then I won't wear them.
Test it out. So right at the beginning of the training, it'll say something like, you should hear this sound in your right ear. And if you can hear it only in your right ear, but not in the left, then things are operating fine. So that'll be a good test. Do you have to put things through the hearing aid so that you can then hear it? Or does the hearing aid just, I'm not actually sure of the technical side.
Well, I can Bluetooth the hearing aids, left and right. So, and then I can put things like I can put a headset over them, but I can't put, they're in canal, so I can't put anything in my ear. So like the headset I normally wear are those ones that vibrate your jawbone.
Oh yeah, the bone conductance ones.
They're pretty cool. But yeah, not the in canal. I can't do an in canal one.
Oh yeah, you don't have to. You can have headphones that sit over.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's completely fine.
Yeah, okay.
That's not a problem at all. So, but it's not as though for the hearing aid you're plugging something in and it's just that if you've got a sound over the ear, it's then amplifying that sound. Is that correct?
Yes, and I'm just wondering whether the technology in the hearing aid distorts any frequencies, because if you're trying to get that beat frequency to work, then the input frequencies have to be fairly true relative to to each ear. And I'm just worried that they might flatten out.
My gut is that it'll be fine because ultimately the hearing aid wants to keep a relatively true frequency.
Yeah, true sound anyway. Yes.
Because otherwise you will hear distortions naturally because you'll have interference, right? You would have destructive interference, constructive interference, etc. So I'm thinking you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
The very first training, we'll go through it. It'll test. If you have any issues, just let me know and we'll see what we can achieve.
We'll work it out. Okay, thanks, mate.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, any final things, and then I'll just talk about what you can expect a little bit with the training, and then we should have plenty of time for a general chat. Okay, let's go ahead. Okay, so getting into HemiSync. What we're going to do here is you'll have access to these files. They are layered audio. So in the first ones, it'll just be like you'll hear a man's voice. He'll tell you sort of what's going to happen. There's like an affirmation associated with it. So we want to put ourselves into the right cognitive state, the right physical state, and then we're going to hear these audios and they have like layers to it. So there's the voice, and then you'll hear things called white noise, which is just like, you know, it's like what you see on the black and white TV when there's just the rice pattern. That's white noise because it's uniform across the entire field. And then you'll have things like pink noise, or it's called 1/f noise. And basically that means that it does have a variation in its sound, and it's going to sound like ocean waves, right? It's going to come in and out, right? So it's kind of rhythmic. So you'll have all of these different layers, and what that's going to allow is the ability to vary the frequencies that are played to each ear, and therefore what you perceive as the difference between them, right? There are no like hidden, what do you call them, subliminal messages or anything that you need to worry about. Sorry, someone's just come into my waiting room. Yeah, anyway, a client. So you'll have those layers. There's nothing subliminal being played. You will then be instructed to follow certain basic prompts. And here are a couple of them that you're going to start with. So the first is something called an energy conversion box. And basically it's just a way of creating like a cognitive storage space, a mental container that you can just like go through the process of putting any concerns, distractions, or anything else into that box. So it's just like a way of mentally centering yourself, right? So this whole training is going to actually make a bit of use of like these mental or cognitive tools and tricks and tips to help you come into the right state, right? So this one, it's like you can, create symbols, for example, like a wallet, to just put away any financial concerns you have just for the duration of this training, right? So you go through this process of saying, I'm not going to worry about my financial stuff just right now, right? I'm not going to worry about whatever, personal hang up I have just right now. At the end of it, if you want to worry about all that stuff, you can do so. But just for the time of this training, see if you can get into a relaxed state, because that's going to allow you to then have that frequency within you of relaxation, openness, which is what allows you to then have these experiences. Okay. There's also something called the gateway affirmation. And Dan, you talked about the fact that what we experience, the energy bands that we're sensitive to are very, very small, right? So the gateway affirmation is basically saying, well, what if we expanded that, our sensitivity, our awareness, our attention? What if we expanded that? So the affirmation is about saying that you are okay with this. You're allowing yourself to expand, to experience more, to know more, to understand more, to have more control over your mind, your body, right? Your energies. The truth is that as you say, there might be entire other realities interacting with us right here that we don't know anything about, right? And so if you are desiring and allowing yourself to expand energetically, then be open to the fact that you may come to understandings or experiences or conversations or, intelligences that we're not really aware of, right? So that is a possibility, but there's nothing to be afraid of. Okay. So the affirmation is about allowing yourself to expand what you're aware of, what you're able to know, right? And be open to the fact that what we think of as reality, I talked about we're kind of stuck on 3D reality because we have to survive and replicate, right? That's kind of our lower self, but our higher self, we're embedded in much greater energetic systems. So to some degree, we have to let go of physical reality a little bit, what we think we know, in order to come into an understanding of other stuff, let's say. Okay. And then you'll go through a process called resonant tuning. So what this is, it's just like you're probably familiar with the word Om, the ancient like Ayurvedic, the Eastern philosophies and traditions have often used the word Om because it has sort of like the complete sound of the of oneness, let's say. Someone can probably explain that better. But you'll come into what's called resonant tuning by going through this process of making this verbalization where it's like, oh, because what it does is it sets up a vibration. It sets up a standing wave, right? In which your lungs, your diaphragm, and your body are going to start creating this internal vibration. Okay. And then as you repeat this, you're going to notice like certain parts of your voice change slightly, and there's going to be a sound going through your ears, and you're going to sort of tune into it, right? So there's a resonant tuning. You're tuning your internal body to an external sound. Okay. And between these three, the energy conversion box, so you just put aside your worries, you just relax, you allow yourself to expand, you allow things to your normal view of reality to just be loosened. And then you tune yourself internally and within that external sound. So it's resonant tuning. Between these three things, you have everything you need then to basically start the process. Okay. From there, you will be instructed on how to proceed. There'll be instructions about sort of different imagery that you might use or find useful as you go through the higher lessons. But I'm sure that once you've done the first one, you'll realize like it's actually very intuitive. It's very step by step. It's like a guided meditation, right? But those are three things that are just worth knowing about, understanding, being okay with, so that the process just so it proceeds more calmly, I guess. You know what to expect. That is basically all the content that I have for today. So now we have plenty of time for conversation. Oh, actually, let me just bring back up this. Yeah. So this is wave one. It's discovery. It's just discovering this stuff, getting familiar with it. We now know kind of the background theory. We know what we're going to practice, and I will make sure that you have all those resources available. We know the homework. So there's community post, chapters 2, 3, and 4. Wave 1 up to focus 10, and we'll continue checking in on WhatsApp. Yeah, okay, cool. So that is all the content, and before we go, I'll recap the homework so it's clear. All right, any things that people wanted to discuss or ask or anything that's going on?
Is there a better time in the day when to do this practice? Like, is it better in the morning, in the evening? What do you think?
I've typically done it in the evening. The danger of doing that is that you could fall asleep, right? Because some of it is a little passive, but even in sleep, you'll still get a fair bit of benefit. But I would say do it in a time where you can be relaxed, but not overtired, right? So if that works for you in the morning, like there's no real time that's a problem, but just know your own energy. When are you likely to fall asleep and when are you not likely not to settle down? Because you need to be relaxed, but not too relaxed.
And do you lay down or you stay seated in the lotus position or?
Yeah, lying down is better. However, if you're an experienced Vipassana meditator, then you could do it sitting down. But I'd say because ultimately this is going to lead you to, if you want to be able to astral travel, lucid dream, etc., it's better to be able to go in and out of the sleep state, and yeah, ultimately lying down makes the most sense.
Okay, so can I ask a question?
Please.
Okay, cool. So I had a couple of experiences with lucid dreaming, and I kind of panic every time. So I actually was trying to train myself to not having them, just because of how much it freaks me out. So what am I going to do?
Okay. So this being guided,
Yeah.
and all of the sounds, etc., are very calming,
Okay.
right? There's nothing in this that can harm you in any way, right?
Yeah.
If you're afraid of, say, just being in a state of consciousness that you're uncomfortable with, I'm happy to talk with you more about it, say one-on-one. Maybe this is something Mel's even dealt with. There might be just some unconscious blocks.
Yeah.
To be frank, unconscious blocks are going to they're going to make it more difficult to advance into higher levels here, but this process itself could be very, very healing for that.
Yeah,
Right.
great.
Because this is very safe, it's very guided. And so you might find that you are able to explore what that block is in a far more conscious way. Right.
Okay.
Because you're going to go into the same energetic state that brings these things on, but you're going to be guided and more lucid. Right.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. I'm happy to
thank
talk
you.
to you outside of this if you'd like to dig deeper, because I'm sure that it's related to some personal things.
Yeah. It's that moment when I realized that what's happening.
Yeah.
And it's like it's the same moment when I'm surfing. It's the same moment when I get on the board and I am right on the wave, and
Yeah.
I lose it. Like I make it happen anyway. So
yeah. So it's kind of
I have
almost a self-sabotage thing.
I have an insight into that, but it's
Yeah.
just that fear that's sitting there.
Yeah.
And yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll explore that then.
Well, so, and Mel, I'm sure, is going to be able to back me up and
Nice.
say something very intelligent on
Wow.
this. But what I will say is that one of the biggest barriers people have to lucid dreaming is that when they realize they're dreaming, they like shock themselves awake, right? It can be really hard to stay in that state, because once you realize you're there, that alone kind of brings you out of it, right? So this, because you're not just doing it spontaneously, you're doing it in a guided, systematic way, it will help you be there. It's like learning to surf, but someone's like holding you up, holding the board's really big, right? So whatever is making you just self-sabotage and drop off the surfboard, this will help stabilize things for you, right? Mel, I'm sure you have something worth adding here.
There's a few tips that I can give you for all of you that might help. And I think one of them, the first one is intention. So before you go into the meditation, having the intention that I know that I am safe. I know that this is a place of love. You can do the white light around you for protection. All of these things set you up for a safe and enjoyable experience. Then when you do hit that moment of becoming lucid, if you focus on calm breathing and grounding, it will help you to stabilize. So even just sitting down in the dream, like if you go, oh my gosh, I'm in a dream, and you freak, just sit down and like feel the ground and just breathe. I'm okay, I'm safe. And then also knowing that you can influence what's going on in the dream. So it all will depend on, what environment you're in the dream. But knowing that you can call out, for help or support in that area. you can just, if you sort of have think of like a saying or something that you can call out, like I am love or show me love or something like that, and be prepared to know what you want to say when you become lucid, because it can, like you said, it can shock you awake. So yeah, you can just have something planned and prepared. And so you sort of think about all of those steps before you go in to do it. So then when it does happen, it's an enjoyable experience. It's something that you're going to absolutely love and become addicted to and go, oh, what was I ever scared about?
Yeah.
So yeah,
well
it is a
said.
weird feeling though. So I understand why you're getting scared, but
Well said.
you'll transform. Yeah.
A lot of the techniques
Thank you.
that Mel just described are actually in the trainings as we go. So you'll create something that's called a resonant energy balloon, right? So this will get you into a state where you're feeling the resonance of your body and like creating this protective layer of energy around you. And it's specifically, so you actually get quite well trained and guided on how to stay calm, stay relaxed, etc. You are perfectly safe. You can take it off at any time. You can move your fingers, whatever. So you're completely safe. And these techniques are fantastic. So you'll have affirmations, you'll have intentions, you'll have all these things. The resonant tuning you do is going to put you into that really nice state. Right? And then if there's anything else that comes up, talk to Mel, talk to me. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for bringing it up as well. I appreciate that you did, because I think there are elements of consciousness that are kind of dark and scary, and we all have our own unconscious blocks and trauma and all this kind of stuff. This is one of the healthiest ways I've ever seen to come into contact with your unconscious mind, right? It's super easy, super chill. And I'm sure after the very first one, you were like, oh yeah, there's nothing I was worried about, just like Mel was saying, right? Yeah, awesome. Okay. Anything theoretical? Because we haven't really talked about the video. The reason I wanted you to watch that was so that you had kind of the whole picture in one go, right? Kind of like a hologram, right? I want you to know everything in one go, but not in high detail. And then we're going to go detail and training, etc. And then we'll come back to the video and the document, because it kind of really gets into sort of the nitty-gritty about the implications of this training and the way the brain works and consciousness onto like a more metaphysical explanation, right? So we'll bring it back around to that as we end. But I'm happy to talk about it if people do want to. Can I then instead go around and just quickly ask, just get a 30-second to a minute soundbite from each of you. What are you looking forward to this week? What do you want to achieve? What's on your mind about what we're going to do here? Angie, why don't you start? Do you need a minute? You're going in the
Hello,
wrong direction.
can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we can't see you anymore.
Okay, damn. It
There we go.
just
Yep, all good.
disappeared. Yeah, okay, cool. What am I looking forward this week, right?
Sure,
Cool. I've been in a cave for about 2 or 3 weeks, just really processing the past year. And so I've discovered quite a few things about myself, and I am what am I doing? I am just looking at them, and I am excited about seeing ways of addressing those things throughout this work. Does that make sense? It's
Yeah,
like
sure.
yeah. So what I want to do is I have such a big picture of, well, not big picture, but yeah, a big picture of what's happening. So what I can do in the frame of mind that I'm currently on, and with this training, is find strategies or ways to address that. And
Yep.
yeah,
Good. I
that's
think this will help
Cool. Yeah.
Bring
Nice.
it's sort of like sound healing, right?
Yeah.
This will have, I think, a very calming effect on you,
Mm-hmm.
but give you the space to explore this stuff to the
Yeah.
depth and degree that you want to, right? You don't have to go any further than you want to, but I think this will show just how healing certain frequencies are,
Cool.
right? So it's like a guided meditation. It brings you into a certain relaxed state, which then you've done Vipassana, that helps you be non-reactive, which means when, like, if some impulse does arise in you, you can objectively be more objective about it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
awesome. I'm really happy for you.
Nice. Thank you.
Ricardo.
Well, I'm really looking forward to start this process because, as I mentioned, it feels like everything is aligning, and I've been working on some blocks and wounds that were re-emerging in the last few months. So, in hindsight, it feels like I was getting ready to bring this new kind of energy, because I know that this kind of practices, whether you like it or not, they bring some sort of energy into your system. And the more blocks you have, the more friction it has to create in order to free you somehow. So I feel it's aligned with the point that I reached in the past week, and I'm looking forward to implement it.
Yeah, fantastic. Hopefully this I don't know, maybe it'll reduce friction. We'll see.
Yeah.
Right. Help you. So again, like the sound healing thing, right? It just helps just move things through because you come into resonance. So I'll be very interested to hear what your experiences are after the end of the week.
Yeah. And also, can I ask one question?
Sure.
Like, do you think it's like this tape can be reproduced? Because I like to produce music, so do you think it's something you can implement in your own music, or it's some secret code that they use?
I don't think there's anything that is theoretically irreproducible. So you could. This is very high quality. So it's like, could you reproduce, say, some of the Beatles or Pink Floyd or Yes or something like that? It's like, a skill issue. Theoretically, yes, you can. It's high quality stuff. In terms of actually breaking it down, it's the audio file type is called FLAC, FLAC. So it's uncompressed. I don't know whether you'll have software engineering tools that enable you to therefore extract all of the waveforms. I don't know because I'm not a sound engineer, but I do know that these are high quality that you theoretically could reproduce because it's really just playing with sound waves, right?
Okay, but they didn't write the exact frequencies that they used, so there is no formula.
There are mathematical formulas for white noise and for pink noise, and then for these particular frequencies. So they do follow basic natural laws, right? So pink noise has a particular, it's called a 1/f. So 1 over the frequency of the randomness. White noise is just uniformly random. And then you have also the pure tones as well. They do other stuff just stylistically, but ultimately it just breaks down to pure tones and different kinds of randomness.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, listen to the first couple waves, and then let's have this same chat again next week, because you'll probably, after listening to a few, you'll have more insights than me. And you'll have the files, so if you wanted to see if you could reverse engineer it, be my guest. I'd be curious to know.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep.
I have something to say related to what Ricardo says. You should check definitely. In the Baroque time, there's a lot of musicians who knew how to implement the music to have the certain frequency they wanted to. Specifically, Bach is quite famous because he understands these things, and many of them they couldn't listen to music and say I'm inspired by that. The most of melodies came to them, and they were able to reproduce them on the head, and they will. I don't know if exactly to get to the frequency they wanted, but they have methods to make the music they want to be a certain frequency. They understood how and how to get themselves into that state. So maybe you could check methods of composition of the Baroque time and the way they used to do music because they are quite masters of these things in Baroque times.
Okay, I will. Thank you. Thank you.
So I'd be very curious to have this conversation again in 1 week after you both have listened to it. Maybe you could, you know, discuss between you what you guys think you could do if you wanted to reproduce it. I'd be very interested. All right, Abel, why don't you continue on? Where are you this week? What's going on for you? What are you focusing on? Those kinds of things.
So for me, is well in my life, as I told you, the main thing has been the uni. I've been going to the uni stuff. But specifically with this training, what I'm looking for is to have a more conscience, as you say, about reality. It's how to see. I think when I talked with you the first time, I told you I see something called the Seminar Phoenix, where it's kind of that talk about how reprogram your subconscious, and I try to do the practice they do. So the reality outside myself started to change because there was a change in myself. So therefore, about many things that were people would say they are weird, it started to happen. And suddenly I find this week a guy that's quite famous around the world called Neville Goddard. I don't know if you heard of him. Well, so he has some
Sorry,
practices.
Neville Goddard?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. I have.
So because I already was quite related to this, my family like this, the first time I used these practices, it worked. So I started to think that what we are learning here is quite related. The things that he talked about getting into a state of consciousness where you can also, and the way your thoughts manage the vibration, quite related. So I'm looking forward to having a bigger understanding, as you said, because when you are in different states, for example, meditating, you suddenly see things that you don't see. You suddenly, and the reality changed outside. You feel like it changed like you want it to change. It feels like there's no limits, but also you start to feel like what I'm seeing is not real, or maybe it's real. Am I real? Yeah, I'm starting to have all these kind of questions because things quite the people would say are quite weird start to happen since this moment. Very everything that I wanted to happen started to happen with easiness, and nothing comes with a problem. And I'm quite surprised because I never expect this way to be things. So with this training, I'm looking forward to understand. Maybe not understand it in words and concepts, but to know how to use these methods, to know how to use, as you said, my relationship with the outside world and my inner world. And that's basically the thing that I'm looking for this training.
Love it, man. Fantastic. And I think it's really on point. A lot of the blocks that we experience in the external world really are the result of our own internal representations, our own mental limits that we apply. And so when we're talking with Ricardo about potentially this reducing some of the friction, it's that if we can put our physical limitations aside just for a moment, right? And this is what the energy conversion box does. You put your physical limitations aside for a moment. You're putting your physical body into a state of restfulness. And then you're awakening your mind, awakening your consciousness, expanding in that way, right? And all of a sudden, physical limitations don't matter so much. And then what you realize is that if your mind is expanded, if your consciousness is, expanded, you can then take that out into the world, and you realize so many of the things that you did limit yourself by were just in your mind anyway. You thought they were physical, but they were actually internal, right? And so this reduces a tremendous amount of friction because now you're less limited by the things that you thought were physical. So I think you're really on the right track here. I think this training is going to be perfect for you. And I think hopefully your answer really helps to shine more light on what Angie and Ricardo were both saying. So nice stuff, man.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Rod.
Awesome. Mel.
There it is. Sorry, I couldn't find my mute button. I'm really looking forward to starting doing it. Basically, I'll give a bit of a vulnerable share. For probably the last 10 years, I've needed to use cannabis, like small amounts medicinally, like every day. And the only time I've ever not been able to was while I was pregnant. And 2 weeks ago, when, we started doing all of this, I, made the conscious decision that I don't, although there are positives to it, there's also some negatives. And I've just, been wanting to stop for a very, very long time, but been like mentally unable to. And so the last 2 weeks, I haven't had any at all. And I've been like unwavering about it. And it's been really, really great. And so I'm just looking forward to starting as well, because I've been like raw dogging it through life for the last couple of weeks.
Good.
And so I think it'll be really helpful. But I think it's just helping me understand all of these concepts, because like I was saying, I kind of find the universe a bit overwhelming. So it's just, it's been really helpful, and I'm just really proud about that. So
Fantastic. Well done, and appreciate the vulnerability.
thanks.
Raw dog in life.
Yeah.
Love it. Dan, what do you got for us? What are you looking forward to? What's going on for you?
I'm looking forward to just going through the practice of that hemisync process. I'm just really keen to see where it goes, because I've never taken drugs in my life, so I've never had, apart from alcohol, and
covering all ends of the spectrum here at the moment.
I stopped using that when I was 26, because I was
maybe for the next 2 weeks you should start doing nothing but drugs.
Yeah, get on
that way you
beers.
and Mel are kind of.
I need mushrooms or something. I don't know. But yeah, so I'm really keen just to experiment with something a bit different that's outside of what I would normally do.
Yep.
I guess the other thing I'm interested in from a performance perspective is, that mindset thing. And when Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, everyone said you couldn't run a mile under 4 minutes. Well, he did it. And then within the next year, how many people broke the 4-minute mile, right?
Yeah.
Same with Eddie Hall, who the first man to lift 500 kilos on a deadlift, right? Everyone said he can't do it, but one of his doctors said to him, imagine that your child is stuck under a car and you've got to lift the car off the child to save its life, right? So that's how he approached the bar. He lifted 500 kilos, and the rest is history. So there's this innate, and as a lifter, we're always trying to think of different ways of lifting more weight. And I just think it's not about lifting more weight, but the general thing about the mind limiting your performance, and so if we've got techniques to, you were talking about the physical limitations, being able to uncouple ourselves from those limitations, then it's just incredible what the opportunity is and what's out there. And the other thing that I was really interested in was about the sound wave whole thing, and that they go out into the universe, right? The sound waves. And I just think, where do they go? Like, so then
everywhere.
like, can you imagine? So then I see this podcast on the universe, right? And this guy's saying that when they were talking about Hubble telescope, and when they found that there's our galaxy is one of like the Earth is at this galaxy. There's like trillions of galaxies, right? So then I'm thinking, well, these sound waves are they could be going for ever. Oh, and then, I'm just interested in it. Just
are you sure you're not a pot smoker? Like, this sounds like
there's all these, I've seen all these bits and pieces over the last few months, and now this is an opportunity to kind of, focus them like the laser, because at the minute it's diffuse and it's not making any sense to me, right? And I'm really struggling with trying to deal with all that diffuseness, because it's crippling almost. So then when I get this opportunity to laser it, to concentrate it, then I think it'll be really beneficial for all this going on in my mind at the minute.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I was thinking, interestingly, I was thinking so much about that 4-minute mile example a lot.
Oh, really?
Yeah, while I was in the gym too. So interesting. It's a bit of telepathy there. But
Yeah.
it's very true that what we think is impossible, right? All of a sudden someone does it, and then it's just becomes almost expected, right?
Yeah.
In fact, almost like everything we do in our modern life would have been considered impossible by someone living 150 years ago, you know? So
Who'd have
I
thought we'd be on a Zoom call? Who thought we could televise people in real time? Who would have ever thought of
that's right.
that? Like,
This is
even in my,
effectively telepathy. What we're
yeah,
doing right now is a form of telepathy.
it is. And in my
Um,
childhood, I had no concept that we'd ever be doing this, you know, just in my life. And so here we are. And I just said, yeah, there's so much potential there. So yeah.
Love it. Love it. And I think exactly the idea that we can break some mental limitations here. And while what we're talking about is out there and a bit bizarre and strange, I think once you understand it, when we're on the other side of this, it's going to be almost obvious, right? And I think that's the beautiful thing about real change of perception is that once you see it, you can't not see it. And so I remember when I was going through this, like with you, Dan, you know, you're starting to see it because it has some fundamental assumptions that you have about reality have to be questioned, right? In order for this to make sense. But if you're willing to do that and you're willing to explore it, and that's why the training is so important. But also, like, the theory is important, but the training is the thing that's going to help you see that this is real and tangible, right? Because otherwise, you just have these two different conflicting ideas in mind, right? And it can feel, as you say, it can feel like chaos. It can feel difficult to manage. But once you then go through the process, through the gateway effectively, once you're on the other side, you look back and you're like, it actually all makes sense. It's actually kind of obvious. So hopefully that's where you will get, because the people who got us here had to do so with great difficulty. But then they create these systems, and hopefully I can be some part of explaining this in grounded neuroscientific physical terms so that you guys and the next people all come to this much more easily. And then it becomes part of just what we understand about consciousness. Okay. There are a couple of requirements. So first requirement is you're going to need stereo headphones. Okay. So, you know, yeah, Apple iPods are fine. The ones like Angie's wearing are fine. Yep. Those will be fine. At the beginning of the first tape, it will just go through like a basic sound check, right? You should hear this in your right ear. You should hear this in your left ear, right? There'll be various sounds, just the audio, that kind of thing, right? So the first tape will take you through that. I have an app if you guys want to use it. I use it for my clients for like personal development. So if you wanted to sign up, especially if you have an iPhone, if you have Android, it's not as useful, but there is a web app. So you can use that if you like. If so, I will drop the links in the WhatsApp. Or you can get the zip files and put it onto your computer and Bluetooth it that way. Entirely up to you. I don't mind what you want to choose. Okay, but you need some form of player. Hopefully something that's not going to like go to sleep during the time that you're listening to these things. So if it's playing through a computer, just make sure you don't have it on like an auto sleep setting or whatever. All right. So just play around with that. But the first lesson, there's nothing crazy. It's just going through the basic steps. So you'll know by the end of that, all your setup, any needs, blah, blah, blah. And if you have any needs, let me know. Okay, that should be pretty simple. My request is that before you start HemiSync, could you please introduce yourself on the School of Alchemy? All right, just make a top level community post, right? Just say a few basic things, like one paragraph, maybe two paragraphs, where you just say, "Hi, I'm Regan. I'm doing the Gateway Training Program. Here are some of the things that I like to do. Here's my goals and vision that I'm working towards. Nice to meet you all," that kind of thing. You don't have to get all vulnerable. You don't have to share anything you don't want to. But the more you do, the greater the experience for all of us, right? I do want to build this into like an ongoing community, a school. I want this to be a great experience for people. So this helps me with that. But like I say, it's entirely voluntary. So if you don't, I'm not going to hold you to anything. But if you're going to, please do it before you start. So then when we do an interview at the end, again, voluntary, if we do an interview at the end, we actually have sort of a snapshot in the beginning, a snapshot at the end. And so that should act as a bit of a cognitive timestamp for you, right? You've said who you are and how you feel and what you're focused on before you start. And then we can talk about it looking back. Okay. So that's it really for today. We'll come back next week. we've got a fair bit on our plate. 3 chapters and 3 lessons. It shouldn't take you too long. And if it is too much, great. Then we can scale it back. But I figure we're only here for a short time. Might as well try to see where we can get to, because you guys might just find you love the training, you love the book, you want to read, you want to listen. Great.
Mhm.
So let's
Are we gonna
aim for that. And if we need to recalibrate, we'll do so. Go ahead.
are we gonna have another session on Tuesday, or we're just gonna jump to Thursday? Okay, cool.
Yep. So the session, the Q&A session we had on Tuesday will stand. For those two, Dan and Abel, I know that's not an ideal time for you guys. The other sessions in the school on the calendar, please try to come into one. It would be a good thing for us to have a little bit of a mid-week catch up to just like calibrate, right? So there are 2 you can attend. There's a Q&A with me on 6:30 a.m. on Monday morning, Dan. That will probably be Sunday evening for you, Abel. And an intro to alchemy at midday on Thursdays, right? Come to either one of those. If neither of those work for you, or the Tuesday work for you, then message me and we'll figure something out. It'd be good to have at least one touch point this week and maybe the next week, and then we can just figure out what works. Because, in a week or 2, you're going to have everything that you need, and it's all up to you, right? Horses out of the gates from then. Okay, any final questions? That's 90 minutes. We got all the way to 9:30. So any questions, and then we'll wrap.
Yeah, one thing. So we have 3 audio tracks this week, right?
Correct.
But since we have 7 days, do we have to listen to them more than once, or just for 3 days? So one
Well,
time in.
what I'm thinking is, like, you'll have all of the audio tracks. If you wanted to go all the way through, that's entirely up to you. I just wanted to make sure that not everybody's going to be able to do daily training, because you kind of need your own space. You need a bit of quiet. You need to be able to relax. So hopefully you can find 3 half-hour, allow for an hour just for setup and things like that. Hopefully you can find 3-hour spots in that time. So it doesn't have to be daily at this point. And if you're reading as well, right, there's a decent amount there. But
Okay.
you'll have all of the audio. So if you wanted to go further, then great, go for it.
Okay, but it's not like you need to practice the same track more than once.
No, sorry, yeah, I didn't answer your question. No, you don't.
Okay.
You don't. It's kind of cumulative. Each lesson will build on the previous one, but
Okay.
it's not like you have to learn a ton of things. They tap into different cognitive states and things like that. So no, you don't have to keep going back. There's plenty to go forward into.
Because like the Vipassana technique, they make you focus on your breath for 1 week, for 3 days, and then
Yeah.
So that's what
Yeah.
I was wondering.
So the training is systematic enough that like there's not a ton you have to hold in mind that requires repeated learning. That said, I have done the first few tracks a number of times. So if you feel like going back, you're welcome to.
Okay.
All right. I know it's over an hour and a half, so we've done really well. Thanks for the attention. Go well this week. Enjoy yourselves and keep up the posting in the WhatsApp. Like, it'll be great to have this community as we're experiencing things. So once you've experienced, let us know. How was the first one? What did you give encouragement, celebrate, whatever. Anyway, take care. That's all for tonight.
Thanks, Regan. Bye, everyone.
Ciao.
Ciao.